Hi guys, Arapampa here. Welcome to another video on my channel. Today we're going to be talking about failure. If I said, hey, raise up your hand if you want to fail, I'm pretty sure nobody watching this video is going to raise up their hand. And yet, failure is such an essential part of being successful. I'll tell you how in this video. When we think of failure, we think of not doing well at something, maybe trying to do something and not succeeding, or we also see as a negative thing. However, failure isn't something to necessarily be avoided at all costs. To get better at something, you do need to fail a few times in order to learn how not to do that thing. In fact, to become the best at something, you're going to have to fail many, many times in order to know the ways not to do things and in order to know what works and what helps you be successful in the long run. So take, for example, Thomas Edison. There was a reporter that asked him at some point that, okay, you've failed about 10,000 times. Why don't you give up? And his response to that was simply, I've learned 10,000 ways not to do it. This is when he was trying to figure out how to create the light bulb. And in that example, there are a few lessons we can learn from that. There's the fact that persistence and hard work do pay off in the long run. So Thomas Edison eventually did end up creating a light bulb that we use all over the world today. And there's the value in failure as well. The fact that failure teaches you a lot, and sometimes maybe even more than success, because it tells you what the pitfalls are and what the things are to avoid in order to just keep getting better. Failure is a natural part of the learning process. In fact, rather than seeing failure, what I would prefer that you do is see the outcome of anything that you get involved in either as success or a learning opportunity. Success or learning opportunity, nothing else. Don't look at it as failure. Look at it simply as a way for you to learn, a way for you to reflect on what you've done and how you can improve it in the next run. That's how you should be looking at failure. Let me give you a few more examples of people who failed initially but eventually succeeded. Take the well-known Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is a Nigerian novelist who has published many books and has had her books translated to over 30 languages across the world. For her, there were times when her manuscripts were rejected, and at those points she felt that maybe the publishers hated her work or she wasn't good enough. They were particularly crushing, is something she said. However, she continued to persist, continued to write, and continued to send her manuscript to different publishers until it was finally picked up. Now, a lesson you can learn from that is that the fact that your work is rejected doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure. It oftentimes may actually mean that it's not a right fit, and so you need to find the place where it's the right fit. Or it may be that the gatekeeper for the place where you're applying to just doesn't like it, but that doesn't mean your book won't sell. I believe J.K. Rowling also had a similar story as well. Let me tell you the story of another person that really inspired me. His name is Muhammad Yunus, and he's the founder of Grameen Bank. Now, Grameen Bank is a microfinance institution that has helped to lift millions of people out of poverty. It was started in Bangladesh by Muhammad Yunus, who is a social entrepreneur. Now, when he first started off, he did find a lot of resistance, and he encountered many people who rejected or just did not understand his ideas about social entrepreneurship. And yet he persisted, and yet he kept pushing. He was an economist, and he understood the impact that providing financing, even as a loan to people, could have on many communities to help the individuals lift themselves and their families and their communities out of poverty. He persisted, and today we have such a bank that operates in many other countries and has been a beacon of light to many others who have gone on to implement similar strategies in their countries in order to empower more people. Now imagine if Mr. Yunus had actually given up too early and said, oh, they've rejected my idea, I failed here, maybe I shouldn't try. We wouldn't have so many people lifted out of poverty, so many people whose lives have been changed. Sometimes your persistence in the face of failure may be the key that unlocks opportunities for other people. Don't give up. If there's one thing I've learned from all these stories, it's the fact that persistence pays off. Persistence, obviously, when you're practicing in the right way, when you believe in yourself and think, you know what, things haven't worked out yet, but they can work out. I just need to find the right fit. Now, to continue this video, I'm going to tell you about a personal story of mine about failure, how I failed a test 4 times and probably more. I just stopped counting after 4, and the lessons I learned from persisting. I'm doing this in the hope that being vulnerable and sharing my story with you would also help encourage you in whatever it is you need to persist on, knowing that failure is not denial. Failure doesn't mean you failed. It just means you've learned another way not to do it. All right, so here's my story. Now, this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right here and tell you how I became the best driver in here. I should really have my own theme song. I think so. Anyway, let's get to the matter of the day. So, one of the rites of passage in becoming an adult is having your driving license, being able to drive a car. You know that feeling? I know not everybody has necessarily gotten the opportunity to be able to drive a car, but for those of you who have, I'm sure you can relate. That first time when you're behind the wheel and you realize, I can go much faster by driving than relying on someone else to give me a lift, or getting the bus, or finding another means of transport, or walking, and the fact that even as I'm learning, I'm just like, oh my gosh, the number of times I've crossed the street as a pedestrian thinking the drivers are in control, and then realizing now as a learner driver that I'm so not in control. It has given me a greater appreciation for safety when driving. Anyway, I digress. Started learning to drive when I was legally able to. In the UK, you can't start learning until I think you're 18. I don't think I even started learning until maybe I was about 20. And I was so looking forward to being able to drive. I like to travel, I like to do things and be independent and, do things myself. And yet, the one thing that I didn't have at that point was a driver's license, the ability to drive. I had a learner's permit, but with a learner's permit, I could only drive a car if I had somebody else in the car or a driving instructor. Now, I've been learning to drive, right? I had lessons from different people, and I thought, okay, you know what, I'll go do the test. And I failed the first time. Then there was a long gap actually when I did the first test and the second test, and the second test came, and I had a few minor faults, but maybe one major fault, and I failed the test again. I was devastated. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep at it. I'll keep going. I'll do time. I have to redo the test. I have to pay for a new test. I also have to pay for lessons to see me through. And it was just expenses that were racking up. And at some point, the question was, should I just, take a break and not do this and maybe come back later? But by leaving a lot of space between each test, it meant by the time I did get back into it, I kind of lost some of the progress I had made. And then I would make just one minor error, or one major error rather, and then I'd be back to square one, failed again. And like I said, I got to about 4 failures and then I just stopped counting. I don't know. I think I probably did the test maybe 5 times, 6 times. I don't remember anymore. I stopped counting at 4, like I said. But I did have different instructors at different points. And I noticed the drop in what I see between when I failed one test and redid the next one. I made the final one that I failed. I made sure that I didn't leave too much time in between. I failed, I accepted it, and once I got the opportunity to rebook, I rebooked as soon as I could and got another instructor who was available to teach me. Unfortunately, each person I learned from, I learned a new skill when it came to driving, and I think I'm actually better for it, such that even on the day when I was supposed to do my test, I realized the instructor that had been taking me and teaching me wasn't available, and so I had to book with another instructor who gave me a 2-hour lesson, I think, before the test. And it was really good because with him, I got to practice sing in the road, and I just showed me a way of doing it, which was quite better than I'd learned from other instructors. And it just so happened that was the maneuver they gave me to do during the test. And I passed. I was so elated when I passed. Like you can't understand how good I felt. In disbelief, and the one time actually that I had the instructor in the car with me when I was doing the test. So I had the invigilator, there we go, to my left, and I had my instructor to the back. And I just thought, okay, it'd be good to have him in the car. So if there's anything I need to learn, if I didn't pass that time, he could teach me. But I passed and I felt so great. But let me tell you the bigger lessons that I learned from this. The first was that by doing all these tests and spending more time learning and spending more money learning and practicing my driving, it meant I had more hours, more guided hours in learning, which those who end up passing first time round may not necessarily have had. And some people who do pass first time round aren't necessarily so confident because, have passed, but then they're still a bit lacking when it comes to driving. However, for me, I felt like that time that I spent with more instructors and with more time actually gave me more confidence when it came to being out on the road on my own. Then there was the fact that I realized, okay, you just have to keep persisting. Like all the stories I previously mentioned, I had to keep persisting. If I really wanted to drive, I really had to keep going despite the failures, despite the embarrassment of not passing first time round or second time round, or how many times I've mentioned already. But yes, also being able to deal with that internal, would I say internal rejection or internal embarrassment maybe, and deciding, you know what, despite that, I'm still going to keep going. I'm still going to keep learning. I'm still going to keep driving and eventually passing it. And then the sweet, sweet feeling of victory when you've worked hard on something and you actually finally get it is sweeter than if I had passed first time round. I can tell you, like hard work is very sweet. Sweeter than if you didn't have to work hard for it. I can tell you that. Something that I realized over time with many things that I failed at and eventually learned and persisted and practiced and gotten better at and eventually succeeded at was that sometimes I'm grateful for the failures that I have at an early stage, because it then means that I actually end up avoiding disasters at earlier stage. So for example, with driving, maybe if I hadn't had enough practice with the driving I do now, I may have had an accident. I don't know. Or maybe I may not have been as aware about some things as I became because I had had so much practice beforehand. So there are things like that. And then many times I'm just very grateful to God, and I'm just like, God, thank you for the little failures and the things that don't go my way right now, because I know God is helping me build my persistence muscle. And I also know that I'm just a person because of it. Nowadays, both my car, other people's cars, as well as shuttle buses when I'm volunteering and helping to move people from one place to another. And I cannot say how invaluable that period of not passing is to me right now, because had I not gone through that, I don't know if I probably would have built the confidence over time, but I'm not sure I would have had as much confidence so early on after passing my test, because I've gone through not passing all those times. So there's just something I look back on now and think, I am so grateful. All right. My final word to you, my final word is, whenever you're faced with failure, remember, it's not failure, it's an opportunity to grow, it's an opportunity to learn, it's an opportunity to be better. It is your stepping stone to success. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and share it with somebody else who could also benefit from it. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me and it helps the algorithm recommend this video to other people who it might help too. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.